talk to us about OpenAI. And for someone who has not heard about OpenAI at all, who's very
OpenNyAI in itself means open. Nyay means justice in Hindi, and so open justice using AI.
one interaction regarding Jugal Bandi that you had with Satya Nadella. Just a little off track, but do you want to talk about it? How was it like?
He's like, yes, because he already knows so much about Jugalbandi at the point that I met him. That because he had talked about it in so many fora, and
Wow.
I was part of that video, so I knew that he'd also seen that video and so on. And
Said it, it sounds so interesting to me that India, with all its diversity, can actually prove to be the leader in AI. With all the experiments that you've got to carry out here, and India can actually lead the way. You're absolutely right in saying that. If you had to explain AI to your grandparents in one sentence, what would you say?
I have already done that, and I've told them, imagine everything that I'm doing for you, but somebody else does it better and faster. So if you're looking for some really bothersome self-reflection, ask ChatGPT who you are.
Absolutely, I'll do that. What is the one thing about AI that excites you the most in the future, which is to come in the future? What is it that you're most excited about, and what is it that worries you the most when it comes to the future of AI?
I think the biggest thing that excites me about the use of AI is what next?
Is it something that keeps you up at night when it comes to AI?
No, I have bigger issues in
Okay.
life.
In a world where artificial intelligence is no longer science fiction but an everyday reality, the law is struggling to keep pace with the machines. Can AI be the bridge between people and justice? Can it simplify the language of courts and untangle the bureaucracy of governance? And most importantly, who controls AI and can it truly serve the public good? Our guest today is someone who sits at the intersection of these crucial questions. Smita Gupta is not just watching this transformation, she is shaping it. As the co lead of OpenNyAI, she is working to make AI a force for access to justice in India. From developing AI powered tools that help people understand their legal rights to showcasing cutting edge solutions on global stages, Smita's journey is a fascinating mix of law, technology, and social change. But who is the person behind this mission? What drives her to take on this challenge? And what does the future hold for AI and justice in India? We will find that out in our conversation with Smita Gupta. Smita, welcome to Awaaz Pahal ki. We are very excited to have you among us today.
Thanks so much, Prakhar. This is really exciting, and I'm very glad to be here. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you, Smita. And let's get started from the very beginning. You were studying law at the Rajiv Gandhi National University of Law, and I was looking at the various internships you've done from, the Niti Aayog to WWF. You were a really active student, and from what I can see, you were also the editor of the journal at RG Annual. So you seem to be very inclined towards the law in and by itself. And then we see this massive shift to law and technology. So, what I first want to understand from you is how did you discover about this very crucial intersection of law and technology? And when did you decide, at which juncture did you decide that you want to do this, you want to pursue this as a career full time?
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you frame it that way because, I was a total nerd. I was the first bencher. I was roll number three in a batch of 200 students. So definitely quite interested in the law. And I don't think I ever decided to study or work in technology. It just sort of was decided for me, I think. But I remember a pivotal point in this journey was my internship with the WWF, the Worldwide Fund for Nature. I was interning with them in Delhi. This is during the COVID pandemic. In the last 6 months of law school, and I graduated during pandemic as well, so it was all happening remotely. And 6 8 months I spent at WWF, and a lot of the work that I was doing was around understanding the low conviction rates of wildlife crimes in Uttarakhand. So again, super legally technical, right? And what I had to do for that was read a bunch of legal judgments from Uttarakhand, and they were mostly in Hindi. Hindi being my mother tongue, I was able to make sense of it, but because I'd not had a legal education in the Hindi language, it was still a bit tough for me to understand the Hindi jargon.
Hmm.
But what that ended up doing was we had to look at the low conviction rates from a very quantitative manner. And I'd never really thought of the law as data driven or quantitative, right?
Hmm.
And once I was able to abstract out a lot of the qualitative stuff that I was reading from judgments into numbers and statistics and percentages and putting it in an Excel sheet, that really broadened my mindset into, oh, law may not necessarily be just what we've been taught in law school. And that's when I started interning with Agami, like right after
Yeah.
WWF, because they were doing a really interesting project called the Summer of Data,
Uh-huh.
which was in collaboration with the Civic Data Lab. And they were looking at the background details of high court judges in India. And again, tabulating that and, coming up with data driven insights from some of these, mostly qualitative details, so to speak. And I think that is when I realized that there was this whole new other world that I had no idea about. And I was really curious to learn.
That's very interesting, Smita. Um, this is interesting. It is interesting to know how you sort of gradually advanced into the world of technology. But I'm curious to understand: were you always someone who was interested in technology in general? Were you interested in gadgets and gizmos growing up as a child, or was this a completely new thing for you?
I mean, I was always the go-to person in my family ki acha laptop theek kar do, printer is
Right.
not working, how to download that app. So I was definitely the
Interesting.
go-to person for that. But I don't think I was ever super tech savvy in that sense. Like
Right.
uh, I did a lot of online gaming, and I
Yeah.
always had a laptop and a mobile since I can remember. But
Mhm.
no, I wouldn't say that I was, making websites or,
Got it.
doing any of that cool stuff that you hear tech bros do.
Right.
Definitely not any of that. And I was also, by the way, very far away from maths. I like
Hmm.
data and numbers. So even that has been also a very new discovery for me.
Very interesting. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's now talk about OpenAI, Smita. This is a really interesting project that you've been on for the last few years. I can see. Talk to us about OpenAI, and for someone who has not heard about OpenAI at all, who's very new to this entire concept, how would you explain OpenAI to them, and what is it? How exactly is it working to make justice accessible in India?
Yeah. Well, thanks for that question. Um, I'm thinking,
Mhm.
open nyai in itself means open. Nyai means justice in Hindi, and so open justice using AI, because we write it as NYAI. And so, really, the meaning is in the name, right? We are trying to increase access to justice by leveraging artificial intelligence and cutting edge technologies for the greater good. And this mission started 4 years ago. It's a collaborative mission, meaning that there are multiple partners and institutions who've come together to make this a reality. The anchor partner being Agami, along with ThoughtWorks, Microsoft Research, national law schools. We have a bunch of design organizations, lawyers, law firms, and so on. And really, it's exciting to see that so many different stakeholders with different, let's say, interests and different points of references, where with government entities, non-government, private, design, research, academic, all of them coming, technology, of course, all of them coming together to say that we don't want to, everybody, when they think about law and AI, it's always that, oh, how can law regulate AI? But rather, all of these institutions coming together to say, how can we leverage AI to make legal systems, legal processes, justice systems, the experience of justice for every Indian citizen a better one, right? And a lot of the problems that face or plague the justice system currently in India, with huge pendency of cases in courts, with more than 50 million cases being pending for the last 5 years or more, with only 2% of Indian citizens being able to access legal aid, free legal aid, which is a constitutional right for all of us, um, with legal services and lawyer services being extremely inaccessible in terms of both cost as well as just being able to know a reliable lawyer, right? Because a lot of the times you hear, Acha, my father's brother's son's friend is a good lawyer, and that's why I'm going to talk to them. But not being able to access or knowing where to go to fight for your rights is a huge issue as well. So because of these myriad, and there's a bunch more, right? Because of these myriad of problems, a lot of the more traditional ways of thinking have been, oh, let's hire more judges, or let's actually, there haven't been any innovative solutions at all in the space, right? There have been very traditional ways of thinking that we need to hire more
Yeah.
judges, or we need to bring about more laws to regulate the space more so everybody has equal access and so on. But what about keeping the user at the center, right? Keeping this experience of the citizen at the center of your problem solving, of solution building. This is something which has been radical to the way that OpenAI approaches solutions in the last 4 years, because the role that I have actually played has been of a bridge between the technology world and the legal world, because for
Yeah.
technologists to build these solutions that lawyers will use, that citizens will use, that judges will use, they need to understand the problems. And for lawyers and judges and citizens and legal researchers to say that these are the problems that we face, are there any
Yeah.
solutions that technology could technology solve for this? And of course, not
Yeah.
the entire solution, but maybe even a part of it. This
Yeah.
translation of both equally heavy jargonistic areas of
Yeah.
profession have been difficult, and that's why lawyers and technologists don't talk. And
Yeah.
so OpenAI
I
has
mean,
tried.
generally speaking, lawyers are very traditional in their approach, right? And which is why when you were talking, I was just wondering about what kind of resistance you would have faced from lawyers when you tried to introduce innovation in technology.
Yeah, no, actually, the way it's a good question. I don't think we've come across a lot of resistance. What
Actually.
we have come across, yeah, no, it's not resistance. I think it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of curiosity. It's a lot of
Uh-huh.
questions. How does this work? What do you mean? Why would annotating a judgment, meaning labeling a judgment into its various parts, how would that help a lawyer 5 years from now? And there's been a lot of concern that, oh, would it not render junior lawyers not being able to do the work that they are supposed to do, and suddenly all of the work that a
Absolutely.
junior lawyer does, an AI is doing,
Correct.
right?
Mhm.
So how do you really solve for that? And those are real questions. Those are
Absolutely.
legitimate questions. And
Yeah.
uh, what we've done, so there are multiple ways of responding to this, right? The one way we've responded to it is by saying, you come and become a part of the process of building the solution, right? We've invited lawyers and law firms and different kinds of these stakeholders into the process by saying, you vet the solution, you tell the
Mm.
technologist what you want, you critique this, you suggest features. And I think by creating containers for this community building, we've had a bunch of learning circles which is an open invitation to the entire community to come and hear about what are the new innovations in the space today. We've had residencies and hackathons and makeathons, basically challenges where we again invite both students as well as young age entrepreneurs and startups to say, okay, these are some of the broad problem statements, let's sit together, brainstorm together with different stakeholders and come up with solutions. So we always try to do that.
Mm. That's interesting. And I'm very happy to hear that lawyers have not been resistant. And I think in the last few years, we've seen that kind of change happen, right? I mean, with Justice D.Y. Chandrachud also really emphasizing upon technological changes, I think that's one major contribution that he has made on the administrative side of the working of courts, right? Where technology is becoming a part of the justice system and the justice delivery system. So I think it's interesting and it's a good thing to know that lawyers are welcoming that change when coming from organizations like yours as well. But Smita, talk to us about the various initiatives that you have taken at OpenAI. I've been reading about a few, but I'd like to hear it from you. What are the various initiatives that you have taken so far, and how exactly are these initiatives working towards making justice accessible. If you can lay them out for our audience, it'll be super helpful.
No, absolutely. And I think I almost started answering this beforehand as well, with a lot of
Yes.
those community led initiatives of maker circles, learning circles. We have residencies and hackathons and makeathons where we create an open environment allowing for innovators, technologists, designers, lawyers, law students to really come together and, think about solutions. Apart from that, we've been looking at how do we create the enabling conditions for more and more innovators to enter this space. And we realized that access to data, access to mentorship, and expert communities have been the two biggest roadblocks in any new entrepreneur entering this space. So in order to sort of deal with this, we've had multiple initiatives where we've tried to create open source building blocks. So if you go to OpenAI's GitHub repository, and I can share that link as well, you'll see a lot of open source data sets of judgments which have been annotated to create some natural language processing tools, which allow for easy understanding of judgments. You're able to summarize them, you're able to cull out information from them. And more recently, in the last 2 years, we launched something called Jugalbandi, which was again a public technology initiative. We released this as an open source software stack that allows for conversational solutions to be built. So don't think of OpenAI, we're not product bros building products, but rather looking at what does the community really need, right? And if it is conversational solutions which are required, let's say if a farmer goes on WhatsApp and says, I want to buy a new tractor for the next harvest season, can the government support me in this because the last season harvest was not enough? And then can the machine, or WhatsApp, or the mobile phone, or whatever app they're using, can it respond to it in a meaningful manner in his own language, in voice, in a way that he will understand about some of the government support mechanisms out there. And so this is so we created the underlying structure for this, which would allow solutions like these to exist for farmers, for women, for children, and others in need. And we've also seen that being able to provide critical information, services, and actions like filling forms, applying for legal aid, all of these things have been quite catalytic, and important for them to be in available in voice, because India is
Mm.
a country which, well, let's face it, we are a very oral country, right? We do not
Yeah.
have a high literacy rate across sectors or across regions. And so to make these solutions accessible to all. So that's been some of our focus. And moving forward, we're looking at frontline justice workers. Everybody's heard of like ASHA workers of the medical world. But can we have like an equivalent for the legal world? And you would hear paralegal volunteers and paralegals who are literally on the front lines providing access to legal aid and critical first aid legal information to citizens. And when we think of paralegal, we might think of Rachel Zane from Suits, and that's like one role that paralegals play, but a huge role. And somebody, I think it was somebody from Outlawed, who said that they actually have paralegals have one foot in the law and one foot in the community, meaning they actually go
Mhm.
with citizens to ensure they achieve meaningful
Yeah.
legal aid. How can we enable and scale the services that paralegals are providing to 10x and 20x? That's the next problem we're looking at.
Very, very interesting, Smita, the work that you're doing. As you were talking, I was just thinking about what has been the response like, because these projects sound amazing, and I'm pretty sure that as and when more and more people use it, um, as AI gets better, and I'm going to ask you a few questions about that myself subsequently about how AI trains itself. So we'll touch upon that. But at the moment, how are people responding? Have you seen people welcoming the initiatives that you're taking? Have you seen some resistance from them? Or what are the challenges that you're facing? But before that, do tell me what has the response been so far?
I think the response is multi-layered. Let me break it down into a couple of parts. So the first, and I'll keep it brief as well, but the response from, let's say, grassroots organizations and NGOs have been that they're extremely keen to understand how to scale their services. So the opportunity to scale has been a very exciting one for private organizations, and
Yeah.
AI, provides that good impetus. So that's been the first response. The second has been that it's extremely costly, right? It is still not
Yeah.
cost efficient to build AI solutions at scale, especially for NGOs. So that
Mm.
remains a real challenge. With and the solution has, and let me also be realistic in saying that this challenge, we're very close to overcoming this, because there are today a lot of plug and play AI solutions, AI tools that you can use, which are quite cost efficient as well. Um, the third, I think, response has been around the responsible applications of this, and what does data privacy look like. My experience, of having talked about this work in regions outside India has been that it is a huge it may actually be the first or the second consideration there. In India, I've seen that be the fifth or the sixth consideration, and that's because we have such lower hanging fruits, right? We have such a dearth of resources and solutions that people are like, okay, take my data, just give me my
Yeah.
basic fundamental human rights. And that's really sad. But what it does is it puts the onus on the innovators and the entrepreneurs and the producers
Absolutely.
of solutions
Yeah.
to keep this at the forefront and ensure that data is being
Fair enough.
used in a responsible
Yeah.
manner. The fourth response, I think, that has come from
Hmm.
government departments has been extremely positive, and that has been such an exciting part of my work as well. The last few years of being able to work with bright spot bureaucrats and government department representatives, because they are really keen to, again, solve for complex access to justice problems at scale. And this is not just happening in the Ministry of Law and Justice, right? This is happening across ministries, because the perception of justice is, oh, legal rights, but it's much beyond that, right? It's access to clean water, it's access to education, and so on. And so we've seen an interest of from multiple government departments partnering with civil society organizations, partnering with the big tech organizations to say, what does meaningful access look like? You tell us. We do not have the in-house expertise today, but we want to build it, and that has been so exciting to see, especially with the India AI mission, which has just received, not just, it's been a while now, which has received 10,000 crore funding for the next few years to build a robust AI community, AI use case and innovation community in India.
That's amazing. Srita, as you talk about the challenges in the response, I was thinking about this interview that you had given, I think, a year or so ago, where you talk about how AI organizations and companies engaged in creating AI-driven solutions do not really interact with each other, and there is no forum and there's no collective as such in which these organizations come together to look for solutions to the challenges that come their way. What has the situation been like so far? And now that India is also stepping up its AI game, so to speak, how is it like between different organizations that are working in the domain of AI? Do we see more collective action, or is it still that they are all, acting in their own individual spaces and competing with each other?
That's a great question, Prakhar. Thanks for bringing that up. I definitely see a shift in culture in terms of wanting to learn from each other, because we realize that, uh, you know, we're all sort of playing from the same ground of not enough access to data, not enough understanding of
Mhm.
the regulatory mechanisms, and so on. And so there is some amount of willingness to learn collectively, and we see that by the existence of fora like the Indian Legal Tech Network, ILTN, which has been started by Shreya Vajpayee and a bunch of others. And I've been a part of those convenings, and I've in fact facilitated a few as well. And I've seen that there is a lot more, like I said, willingness to learn. Um, what we've also seen in the last 1 year is, having said that, what we've also seen in the last 1 year is a boom of legal AI solutions and proprietary
Yeah.
solutions, which I
Yes.
feel is goes against a little bit of what you said. There isn't a lot of collaboration there, but what there
Mhm.
is a market indication that India is now willing to pay for these services, which was not the
Mm.
case earlier. Meaning
Yeah.
that Indian law firms, Indian immense big companies, the even, let's say, not MSMEs, but even, let's say, medium enterprises, they are willing to pay for enhancing their legal processes, which is
Yeah.
a big shift from a few years ago. So even though they are still proprietary, I would say it's still a win in the short term. In the
Mm.
medium to long term, there will have to be more collective initiatives on responsible AI integrations. There will have to be more collective learnings on how do you bring down the cost of AI, and at the
Mm.
same time make it more accessible to the ones who need it most. Building AI
Absolutely.
solutions for the creamy layer of India is great. They will anyway
Yeah.
access it. They will use the Harvey AIs of the world. But what about the people who are dealing with extremely locally contextualized justice issues, and how do we build solutions for those? That is where we need more collaborative effort, and I feel like we've started. OpenAI is also trying to play a role in bringing together a big part of this community, but we still have some ways to go.
Absolutely, I completely agree. In fact, that just makes me think. I was working with a law firm until recently, and I remember we actually had multiple founders of various AI technologies coming up to us and presenting various solutions for different stages of a transaction. That we can, help you draft an entire contract, or we can help you do the due diligence exercise. All of the work that we had been doing as junior lawyers ourselves. And I remember law firms actually showing a lot of interest in that, as opposed to which, when I look at organizations like yours, like you correctly said, that I think we need a much greater, a bigger launch pad there, and we need more collaborative action, and that voice actually needs to be amplified because we are a long way to go there. But again, on that, thank you for the work that you're doing, Smita. I'm sure there are greater things to come as far as OpenAI is concerned. But this one initiative that I was reading about, which is Jiva, Judge's AI assistant, and Alap as well, which is the AI for legal tasks. From what I could understand, if I could put it very simply, it is like OpenAI is making codes smarter. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but that was my conclusion of it. But what I'm curious to understand, Smita, is that given the fact that so many times we've seen acknowledgements from other AI founders also that what they created versus what it finally became was very different. In fact, in the same interview that I'm referring to from last year, the interviewer refers to this particular, I think, article with another AI founder who actually mentioned that Bengali as a language, it wasn't introduced in the AI that they had developed, but subsequently Sundar Pichai was the person who was referring to that Bengali was not a language that was introduced, but the AI picked it up itself, and then it was providing solutions in Bengali language. So, which is of course very interesting, but also a little scary to me that this is happening, and it is happening at the pace that it is, right? What I'm trying to ask you, Smita, is given this huge power of AI to self learn, I'm curious to understand if bias can become a problem in the future, or it has become a problem, especially when it comes to its application in the law. Do you think that AI bias, like either biases of individuals who are operating the AI, or just in and by itself, do you think AI could become this Frankenstein's monster, which was intended to provide solutions related to the law, but is now creating more problems? Do you think a situation like that could arise in the future?
I'll
Or
respond to
am
your
I being
question with an
paranoid?
analogy. No, no,
Sorry.
no, not at all. No, no. It's an absolutely valid concern, and I hear it everywhere, right? And I'll respond to your question with an analogy. Um, Many years ago, when X-rays and radiology was invented, doctors, everybody was concerned that it was going to take over the medical profession, right? What use are doctors now if they're not, if they are not the ones who are touching your pulse and telling you, and doing a physical exam and telling you what the issue is. um, but what ended up happening, and we've seen that evolution today, right? X-rays and radiology technologies have only made doctors smarter, more capable, and more efficient, right? It has made medical science more uh, transparent for citizens. Citizens or users, or people now understand their bodies better because they are also able to see physical evidence of it, and it has complemented and supplemented medical efforts by doctors. Similarly, and of course, there have been issues. There have been issues of, I once went for a medical scan, and the doctor said, and I read the report, and me being me, I put it on Chat GPT, and I asked it a bunch of things, and I googled it, and I was
I
fully
do that too,
prepared.
by the way.
Of course,
I do
everybody
that
does it, right?
recently
We all do it.
myself.
Yeah, and I did that, and the doctor went through it, and he was like, "No, nothing to worry, you're all okay." And I said, "No, but you did not refer to this point, this point. What about this?" And he said,
Correct.
"Your body is massive. There's going to be a billion things in it. Not everything is going to be a problem. If this is a whatever, ChatGPT had told me, that, ask your doctor about this." And so of course it's an issue, right? And till date, if I didn't trust my doctor, if I didn't have a certain amount of faith, I would be like, no, I would be
Yeah.
paranoid and go to like five other doctors.
Hmm.
And you could say that there was medical negligence if for god forbid, if something had turned out, the doctor had mistaken for it, and you could say that, oh, that's bias of the doctor, right? That he thinks he knows better and he did not refer to the technology. So these situations will come up, right? There will be edge cases, there will be misdiagnosis. The AI systems will come up with wrong results, and they do all the time, and all of us know it. It's a matter of looking at how much you want them to play a supplemental role and not a decision making role. And I think that's really at the crux of sensitive areas like um, law and medicine and finance. In areas like more creative marketing and design and arts, we've seen that it's still okay to have it play a more decision making role in that sense. But in terms of life and death and really sensitive issues, it's better for it to play a more supplemental and supportive role. And sorry, I know I'm belaboring the point,
No, no, please go ahead.
but a recent experiment or recent project work that we were doing with a certain government department. We realized, we started off, and this is like a year back, we started off by saying, oh, you should have a conversational solution, you should have a chatbot,
Hmm.
make it easier for citizens to interact with your system and so on. 1 year later to today, I cannot tell you, Prakar, the solution is so big, and the conversational AI chatbot is like a 5%, is like 5% part of it.
Yes.
And because, when we think about building solutions for citizens to enable access to justice, AI is always going to be a small part of it. You have
Yeah.
to build the systems, the enabling environment for better access. So yeah, I'm super disillusioned now that AI is the
Got it.
solution or tech is the solution. It is a part of the solution, maybe.
Absolutely, and I think what I'm also hearing you say is that the relevance of human beings cannot really it can't go away. I mean, it has to be a collaborative effort between the AI itself and human beings, and that can't be replaced. So that's a very positive outcome, really, of this interaction. Let me
There
also,
is a
yeah,
sorry, just I
go
didn't
ahead, go
mean to
ahead,
cut you
please.
off, but
Yeah,
there is a saying, human in the loop, in the tech
right.
world, where you say you have to keep a human in the loop when building an AI solution. No, you have to keep the AI in the loop when building a human-based solution,
That's
right?
amazing.
Uh,
Yeah.
because when you think about scaling up complex issues, complex tasks which are extremely mundane, you need AI in the loop. But when you talk
Mhm.
about making meaningful access to justice or access to information for citizens, you need to create a human system. You need to apply first principles of design. You need to apply systems thinking, human
Mhm.
centered design, and keep these sort of design principles almost in your mind, right? And sorry, I'm getting excited because I love this point, but
Absolutely.
I was
Yeah.
recently at the University of Queensland, where I attended a women in leadership program, and they were really talking, and it was everything to do with uh, solution building, which was so cool to me. I went to a leadership program, and they're talking about tech solutions. But there was a quote that they started with on day one, where they said, when we talk about innovation in this decade, we're really talking about design. And that stayed with me so much. I think of myself as a lawyer and a technologist, and I was like, hey, am I also a designer now? And it's really hitting right at the existential crisis and the
Curator.
identity.
I think another term could be curator, Smita, right? Because that's what I read on the OpenAI website also, and I thought that is so true. It's not just you did introduce yourself as being the link between the law and technology, but if you look at it, you're actually curating this whole thing for all of us. So that's amazing. I mean, kudos to you for the work that you're doing on that front. But great. So
Yeah,
since you did
no.
mention your this particular visit to the University of Queensland, I'm reminded of another visit that you had. I think this one interaction regarding Jugalbandi that you had with Satya Nadella. Just a little off track, but do you want to talk about it? How was it like? How excited were you? And did you have any interesting? Did he give you any interesting feedback that you then carried and sort of used that in Jugalbandi?
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing that up. That was very cool. It happened exactly a year ago in Feb last year.
Uh-huh.
So Satya Nadella essentially comes to India every year
Uh-huh.
in order to get a sense of the innovation here. And we had launched Jugalbandi as a conversational solution a couple of weeks after ChatGPT was launched. So, and presented it to him 2 years back as well. So after a year of deployments and a year of exciting conversations with governments and private organizations, um, we had learned a lot, and we had partnered with Microsoft Research on building a bunch of other solutions as part of it, open source solutions as part of it. So it was a small interaction, 10 minutes interaction. Me and Samir Sehgal from Microsoft Research were there, and um, he was just really nice. Yeah, and I've been telling people when after the experience, that it's like talking to like a nice boss. He's so
Yeah.
encouraging. He's like, yes, because he already knows so much about Jugalbandi at the point that I met him, that because he had talked about it in so many fora, and
Wow.
I was part of that video, so I knew that he'd also seen that video and so on. And it was just like meeting, like, hey Satya, you've been talking about us. Now I'm here to tell you about what's been happening. So it was just a really like a cool moment for that. But he actually had a lot of questions about the tech of it, which was exciting to me, because I felt like, he would already know how we've done this. Like, why does he want to know? But that was cool. So he just, kept. And I think the reason he also wanted to understand was to see what level India and the research that's happening in India is at, because it's quite cutting edge as well. And we've seen that, oh, India is the use case capital of the world, but
Yeah.
AI use case capital of the world. But I feel that we're also the AI innovation capital of the world, because it's quite cutting edge, the work we're doing. And we had actually presented to him an image of, in 5 years from now, there is Anandi, I think her name was, from Telangana, who's able to access, these rights and so on. So we'd created an entire future of India, and he then talked to us in Hindi, and I was like, wait, that's cool.
That's
So it was
amazing.
pretty cool. He's
Yeah.
like, I understand. And she was from Telangana, and that's where he's from. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was quite exciting to talk to him on such a relatable level. Like, I did not feel like I was talking to Satya Nadella. I just felt like talking to somebody who really cares and who understands the mission, and who, while he had a lot of questions about the tech, was actually excited about this future image of every person being able to access their rights. And he
That's
really,
amazing.
I think, embodied that. It was very cool.
Yeah. That's amazing.
I
I
was
think
very
there is
scared.
this. I'm
I
sure.
know you asked me
I
about
mean,
my
I can't
experience.
imagine. But great, yeah. I mean, Smita, it's amazing to see you having reached where you have coming from. As Rohit was mentioning earlier before the podcast started, not really one of the top NLUs. I don't know. I don't understand this characterization. I'm not from an NLU at all. But it's amazing the kind of example that you're setting for the example that you're setting for people, and especially lost students all around. I think it's absolutely amazing. And thank you for sharing in detail about your interaction with Satya Nadella. Let's talk about, let's spend some more time in generally understanding where AI is heading, and the big picture with respect to AI and its intersection with the law. And one of the things that we've seen happen recently, and which is sort of becomes scary is this whole issue around deep fakes and then also misinformation, to a great extent AI generated propaganda also. We've been seeing all of that happening recently, and I think deepfakes is one big issue, right? Everyone's talking about it. Just this morning I was reading Vidya Balan, came out with a statement that some of her deepfake videos are circulating, and very concerning indeed. So as a lawyer, I want to, and as someone who understands technology as much as you do, I want to understand what kind of intervention do you expect from the lawmakers when it comes to these issues that we're talking about? Do you think that there is a loophole, there's a gap in policy, there's a gap in the law, which needs to be addressed for these issues to be dealt with adequately?
Um, and you may disagree with me, but I tend to have a bit of a more open approach to this, where I
Hmm.
say that lawmakers and the policy experts shouldn't rush to regulate.
Sure.
Um, a right, that is has been at the yeah, base of that's been my stance since day one, that we shouldn't rush to regulate, we should rush to
Yeah.
understand these systems. When you
Yeah.
rush to understand these systems, it's difficult because they're growing and developing and evolving every week, every month, every fortnight. And it's tough to keep up. For me also, it's tough to keep up. I do not know what was released last night.
Mhm. Mhm.
And having said that, we also need to have some trust in our current laws. The IT Act, for example, or the DPDP Act that has come out, they do take they do respond to some of the emergent challenges already. They may not refer to AI, right, but they do refer
That's
to
right.
misinformation. They do refer to content which has been produced without your consent, content which has libelous information. So all of those things do exist. It's a matter of also sort of expanding the interpretation to include some of these new age use cases, and a lot of that does come from, I understand, judicial legislation, as we call it, right, where the judiciary is taking suo moto cognizance, or just taking just basically taking a lead on expanding the interpretation. So that's second.
So sorry, I just need to
Huh.
sort of cut you out, Smita, on that.
Right.
But can you give us some examples of how and where the judiciary has taken initiative in this domain? Because when you talk about how the current laws address the issues already at hand, I personally feel, this is my opinion,
Yeah.
that those aren't sufficient. Because, for example, when it comes to the IT Act, one of the things I was going through recently was Section 66D, if I'm not mistaken, which talks about cheating by impersonation, which is the relevant section with respect to deep fakes. But I was wondering what happens if there is no cheating, if there's just impersonation, right? What happens in a situation like that? So to me, there are those loopholes. So it'll be interesting to know where the judiciary is intervening, if it is.
Yeah, I don't think there have been any such amazing uh, interpretations till now. And I hear you on, like, let's say that they're not sufficient. I'm not saying they're sufficient, but I'm saying they do exist, and we shouldn't
Mhm.
rush to create laws which would then just make it messier by saying, oh, these all these five different laws apply in this one
Yeah.
particular situation, which anyway
Okay,
happens
fair.
today in both civil and criminal
No,
matters, right? We
absolutely. Yeah,
see.
yeah. We don't
But
want a
then,
scattered
huh,
legislation. Absolutely. Yeah, I
exactly. And we
agree.
see lawyers saying, no, I think this section is better because there has been a.
Yeah.
So that just creates a lot of murky areas and makes it
Fair
difficult for
enough.
citizens, honestly, and
Absolutely.
creates more regulatory compliances on startups, on tech companies, which I feel
Yeah.
does curb innovation at some point or the other. I'll give you an example, actually, because I'm not an expert in this, and I don't claim to have all the answers. But online dispute resolution, right?
Yeah.
Which
Mhm.
is just for the audience, for somebody who may not know, is when petty disputes are basically taken outside of courts and resolved on an online platform. And today there are more than 20 startups, actually, who are helping resolve upwards of 2 crore cases per month, across, like, let's say, traffic penalties and matrimonial cases and so on, or wage disputes and so on, labor disputes, on these platforms today. the Arbitration Act or any of these other alternative dispute resolution acts, mediation, conciliation, etc., none of them actually regulate ODR, right?
Hmm.
And yet you see such a huge function, such a huge judicial function being relegated to the online space. Still the same processes to a large extent, but but the platform is online. And there has in fact been sorry about that.
No
There has
problem.
in fact been sorry, I just got a bit distracted. There has actually been an initiative by ODR startups themselves to not have the space regulated, but rather regulated, self-regulate. Come together as a collective and say these are some of the practices we'll adopt. These are some of the data practices, and so on. And I'm not saying it's 100% successful. I'm not saying that all of them are participating or it's super streamlined and easy and flawless. It's not. But the fact is that since back in 2018 there were zero startups, and pendency, I mean, it still is, but was a huge issue. Today, more than 20 startups, more than 2 crore cases every month being solved on ODR. There has to be merit in this, right? And I'm not saying that this happened
Absolutely.
only because there was a lack of regulation, but I'm sure
Yeah.
it played some role.
No, absolutely. And I think it gives you a greater space to play with when it comes, I mean, in the absence of very strict regulations, which let's say completely bar the use of AI, let's say, or something of the kind. I think there's a greater space for AI related organizations to play with also. But I do genuinely think that with AI related organizations, there is need for greater self regulation also. I'm not sure how that would work, but I think that I tell me what you think about it, Smita. But I do think that there they can do better.
No, absolutely right. And with some of these like RAI principles and playbooks and approaches and toolkits that are coming out by every other organization, there
Yeah.
is no dearth of guidance. There's no dearth of
Mm.
material on how to do better. There
Mm.
is currently no incentive structure. And a
Mm.
big part of that is that startups want to be fast. They want to be quick
Mm.
in publishing something, in experimenting and releasing their findings and so on, and rightfully
Mm.
so, right? This is a quite a cutthroat world when it comes to tech solutions, so I get it. But I think as a community, as a culture, we really need to think through what are we rewarding? Are we rewarding
Mm.
speed? Are we rewarding accuracy? Are we rewarding experience of citizens? And it's possible that you reward all three, but to what extent? In finance, for example, you may reward accuracy more. In justice, you may end up rewarding experience of justice more. In medicine, you may
Yeah.
end up rewarding speed more because you need to, find a solution for cancer the fastest, and so on.
Yeah.
Um, so really, there is no one answer, right? There is no right answer. But I was
Absolutely.
part of the one thing, if I can share.
Yes, please.
Last year, I was part of the Indian delegation to the Critical and Emerging Technologies Forum of the Quad, which is the India, US, Australia, and
Yes.
Japan partnership coalition. And there, this was under Chatham House rules, so I won't mention who, but somebody asked, is there merit or value in coming up with the Quad responsible AI principles that the four countries will then agree to?
Mm.
There was almost an immediate shutdown from almost everybody, because they said that there are already so many that exist that we can subscribe to, and our respective countries do subscribe and prescribe to. So there is no sense in coming up with another one of these. What we really need to
Mm.
think about is, how do you implement them, how do you make them practical and actionable? That is
Yeah.
what's lacking today.
Mm.
And honestly, when you ask that question about bias in the beginning, the it all comes down to data, and it all comes
Mm.
down to who
Of
are the
course.
people who are responsible for building these. If you're going to have a team of 30 somethings, men only, white only, XYZ only,
Mm.
those biases will be represented in whatever you build.
Certainly.
Diversity, inclusion, representation is at the foundation of any solution you build, and it will come from who's involved in the making of it. And that is really at the core of what OpenAI is also doing. We want
Right.
everybody, all different kinds of stakeholders, to be involved in the making, and that's the only bet you have against bias.
No, absolutely. Agreed. Agreed, Smita. All right. So before we will have a short rapid fire section also, Smita, but before we get into that, One
I
final
was not
question.
told about this. Dear audience, I was not
These are
told
going to
about
be fairly easy. I can tell you that. I can promise you that. But they'll be really fun. So yeah, we'll come to that in just a moment. But before that, Smita, my last question with respect to AI and the bigger picture. What is the one thing about AI that excites you the most in the future, which is to come in the future? What is it that you're most excited about? And what is it that worries you the most when it comes to the future of AI?
I'm going to need a second.
Sure. Is it something that keeps you up at night when it comes to AI?
No, I have bigger issues
Okay,
in
great.
life.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. No, I think the biggest thing that excites me
Hmm.
about the use of AI is uh, what next? I know this sounds funny, but AI is a point in time right now, and I just can see that it will lead to something much more transformative, much more exciting, whether that's quantum computing or something else entirely. So I'm already
But you
looking.
tell us, Smita. I mean, you should know. We should be the ones asking this question.
I definitely do not claim to know anything of that sort, but another area that I have been looking up and reading into and just taking an interest is quantum computing and trying to understand. There are a bunch of like online courses as well for anybody who's interested. I can share the links that I have been doing personally, and I find um, taking scalability and solving complex issues to the next level, and really
Uh-huh.
seeing how can we take this technology to solve the biggest problems of our times, like the climate crises. I think that is what really excites me. um, what worries me is that so many things but I think the one thing that really does worry me is how can we as a country, how can India really show the way to the world in how to solve for such a diverse array of use cases, and to not get bogged down by, oh, this is what the Western world, this is what the world is doing outside. I
Mhm.
don't, this is one point in time. I know we've done that with the constitution, we've done that with a lot of our laws, but this is
Yeah.
one point in time where we do not have to look outside. We only
Can
have
be
to
the
look inward,
leaders.
and we have to look deeply, deeply inward to see what are the problems that are unique to us, because 99% of the problems are unique to us. And honestly, if we can
Yeah.
solve for them, we can solve for most of the problems in the world, right? So what worries me here is that we might not, we might underutilize the uniqueness of India, and that's something that I'm a big proponent of, and I think uh, yeah, I'm a big proponent of, and that's something that also OpenAI believes in, and something we're working towards.
Yeah, I mean, now that you've said it, it sounds so interesting to me that India, with all its diversity, can actually prove to be the the leader in AI. With, I mean, all the experiments that you've got to carry out here, and India can actually lead the way. You're absolutely right in saying that. Thank you for the very detailed answer, Smita, and very valid points indeed. But let's now jump into the rapid fire round. Easy questions. Please feel free to answer, and you've got to be rapid. And this is supposed to be, full of fire. So let's see how this goes. Um, so, all right, let's get started. We're going to try and,
I'm not ready.
still. Okay, I'm sure you are. Trust me. Okay, some easy questions, but let's get into it. So, if you had to explain AI to your grandparents in one sentence, what would you say?
I have already done that, and I've told them, imagine everything that I'm doing for you, but somebody else does it better and faster. आप गूगल देखते हो ना, जैसे गूगल होता है, अब आप
Right.
गूगल में कोई भी सवाल डालो, आपको अच्छा जवाब मिल जाएगा.
Wow.
I kind of
How
explained
cool
that
is
to
that?
them.
Yeah, that's amazing. Great. Are you more of a dark mode person or a light mode person?
Light mode.
Okay, interesting. What was the first gadget that you ever owned and you still have it?
Oh, it was the iTouch. It was the iTouch with no, it was actually the iPod, but the iPod was
Okay,
not mine,
yeah.
it was my sister's.
I,
The iTouch
I
was
see.
mine,
Got
and I
it.
used to take it to school and be like, oh, I would listen to music. I didn't even want to listen to music. I just wanted to take it to school.
That's amazing. If you had to live without one, Wi-Fi or your phone, which one would you give up?
I mean, my phone, right? Obviously, like, how can I
Yeah,
live
because
without
then you can.
Wi-Fi? Yeah.
Right, you can still
By
access
Wi-Fi, I mean, I
Wi-Fi.
guess you mean also data, right? Like
Yeah, well,
internet.
everything that comes with it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like
Yeah,
internet, right? Yeah, obviously, I can live without my phone, not the internet. Yeah.
correct. Yeah. Would you rather debate against an AI or have an AI as your debate partner?
Debate partner, yeah. Come on,
So
ChatGPT has
helpful.
ruined us all.
Yeah, I can understand. Just to share an experience, I had a temporary gig at a news channel. I was sort of transitioning into journalism, not happening now, but I actually saw people rehash stories that were published online. They would just take those stories, copy the link into ChatGPT, and say just reproduce the story, and that would happen with like complete accuracy. Of course, one would have to go over it again, but I was impressed. I thought, what is happening? The world has
Very
really
true. You want
changed.
a fun hack on ChatGPT?
Yes, please tell
You know
us.
what you know what I did the other day? So, because a lot of us use it very regularly,
Uh huh.
so it has actually learned a lot about you. Especially if you have only not especially only if you have an account, because then it
Hmm.
has all your history, right? So I just went on it and said, "Who am I?" And I cannot tell you what a detailed answer it gave me. I got scared, and then
Yeah.
I asked it to like write an introduction for me. I did not give it any new information, right? Just on the basis of my search history of the links. It has my CV, it has everything, and it was just fantastic. So if you're looking for some really bothersome self reflection, ask ChatGPT who you are.
Absolutely. I'll do that. And I'll also ask you to help me prepare an answer to that crucial interview question. Tell us something about yourself, right? So yeah, but great insight there, Smita. All right. One thing that AI can never replace. You can't say human beings. Anything else?
Never replace
Yeah.
emotions.
Interesting and rather deep. Great. Okay. If AI could predict one thing about your future, what would you ask it?
I already told you I'm asking it about my present and past, future
That
also.
you
I'll
did.
ask. Fine.
But what would you
Whether-
ask? That's the question.
if it could correctly predict, oh God, maybe when I die, so I
Uh-huh.
know how much time I have to like maximize on everything I want to do.
Very interesting. Smita, there are so many of these answers I'm actually copying and I'm actually going to, ask ChatGPT after this interview is over. Okay. Two more questions. One, if AI could argue in court, which famous lawyer or judge would it sound like? Or would you want it to sound like?
No, but that's the point about AI, right? You can make it sound
It
like
can sound like
anybody.
anyone. Well,
Yeah.
fair enough.
So,
Absolutely. But who would you want it to sound like? I mean,
who
which
would
would
I
also
want
then
it to sound
answer who's your favorite lawyer.
like? Yeah, I think that's what you're asking. Um,
Right.
I don't know. I'm imagining which lawyer I know is the most AI like. And so now I
Uh-huh.
cannot answer that question.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, no problem. And the last question. If AI could give you one superpower, what would you choose?
I'm guessing it's not physical superpower, right? It's like a
Anything. Yeah, yeah, of course.
cognitive
Most likely not.
superpower.
Hmm.
I can already speed read, so that's fine. I think writing, dude. I just wish I was a better writer.
I'm sure you're a wonderful writer, Smita. We did actually come across things that you've written in the course of our research, but sure.
Isn't ChatGPT do those?
Okay, got it.
I'm kidding. I'm
That's
kidding.
interesting. Yeah. But very interesting, Smita. I mean, thank you so much. This was a very fun conversation. We had so much to carry back home, and I'm sure the audience will also have a lot to carry
So
back. Um, Intriguing, very interesting. I honestly did not know as much about AI as I do now after this interview. I'm sure our audience will also feel that way. Thank you for taking the time out, Smita. This was very interesting. This was a lot of fun. If you have any final thoughts, and then we'll close.
no, absolutely. Thanks so much, Prakash, for having me and for the entire Awaaz Pahal team. And thank you for Rohit for thinking of me for this. I think, no final thoughts, just that this wasn't as much about AI for me, this conversation, as it was about, building solutions which are actually meaningful and helpful. And I feel that as a lawyer, um, and as somebody who's in this field and for the audience who's thinking of what next for them, or maybe even just thinking about uh, yeah, what makes them tick, why do what you do. um, the impact that you see in terms of not just, oh, we built the first best solution in legal AI, to say, hey, I made that person's life easy. I made that access to government scheme information in that village much faster than it was before, or much more real. I think that's a much better metric for me, and that's what excites me and keeps me up at night, like you asked. Happy thoughts keep me up at night. And
Amazing. Yeah.
a hopeful future keeps me up at night. And I feel that, yeah, India is at a very interesting inflection point, and all of us should sort of try and recognize that, and play a part in that. And none of this, you kept saying that, oh, Smita, you've done wonderful things, and really thank you for being so kind and generous with your words. But honestly, the team at Agami and the team at OpenAI, they are the ones who are, the real rock stars in terms of when we work together, five of us, six of us,
Absolutely.
10 of us.
Yeah.
That's when I feel like the most energetic. So definitely surround yourselves with people who are also doing the kind of work that you want to do, and you can look up to them and say, hey, that's amazing, let's work on this together. And I've been very, very lucky and grateful to be surrounded with such people.
That's
That's
incredible. Thank you. Thank you so much, Smita. More power to you. May you continue fighting the good fight. May you continue working towards making AI that one tool which will actually enable that justice actually reaches the last mile. Thank you for the work you're doing, Smita. It was great having you on the podcast. To our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. Please do continue supporting us. Please do continue watching us. We'll see you hopefully very soon again. Until then, take care. Goodbye. Thanks for being with us.